Welcome to another live session of Leveraging AI, the podcast that shares practical, ethical ways to improve efficiency, grow your business, and advance your career. This is Isar Meitis, your host. And today we are going to talk about the first step in your way to business efficiency. And it's actually very interesting because it's not exactly AI related. And yet we are going to use AI in order to define the first step of AI process and do this. And I'm going to share a screen. I'm going to share a presentation with you. And those of you who are listening to this as a podcast, first of all, come and join us live. We do this every single Thursday at noon Eastern time, usually with another guest as an expert. But if not, then you're just with me, which I hope is going to be at least okay, even though the experts are always amazing. And I appreciate every single one of them. I want to start. What do you think is this first and critical step for AI automation? So if you're again listening to this podcast while you're driving or mowing the lawn or walking your dog or washing the dishes, whatever it is that you're doing as you're listening to podcasts, just think about it. Just think, what do you think is the first and critical step of doing AI implementation in your business? If you want to automate something, how do you start? So I start to see results and people say, know your data and your inefficiencies, the readiness of the culture of the company, AI education for leadership, all are great answers. Like they're all correct to understand. Like you need to understand all those. But in this particular session, we're going to dive into a very tactical aspect of this. So what do I mean by a tactical aspect? We are going to understand our business processes in a high level of detail. Now, that's extremely important for every company, whether you want to implement AI or don't want to implement AI. Mapping your processes is extremely important. Now, you all know that, and nobody likes to admit that, but all of us are guilty of this. There are multiple processes in our business, whether you're the CEO or in leadership position, that you know that Jim knows how to do, or Jill, or Mike, or Susan. And if you're going to go to Susan, she will help you through the process, but she's the only one that knows exactly how to do this. And that's not a healthy thing for an organization. Being able to know every single process exactly how it's done is very important for every business for multiple reasons. Reason number one is redundancy. What happens if, God forbid, something happens to Susan, or she's on vacation, or she decides to jump ship and move to a different company, or anything else? You're screwed. Nobody actually knows how to do that thing. And in some cases, these tasks and these things are on the critical path of the company. If you onboard new members of your team, you now have to sacrifice the time of the people who know how to do the process in order to train the new people. However, if you have the process very well mapped, you don't have to do that. They can just follow a checklist and a video and an explanation on how to do the thing, and they can do it with significantly less training, which puts less burden and overhead on the existing employees, which allows you to scale your business. If you want to sell your business, people will want to know your processes. And if you have them well mapped, that's going to give them the warm and fuzzy that you know what you're doing in your business. So there are many benefits beyond AI. But in addition, if you want to automate processes with AI, the very first step that you have to know is exactly how the process works. Because without that, when you try to automate it, it's going to break because you're going to be missing critical pieces of the process. Now, all businesses want to have mapped processes. The reason we don't do this because it's a pain in the butt, or at least it was until we now have AI tools that can help us do extremely amazing mapping of business processes that are very detailed, that turn into checklists and flowcharts and videos and all of that without investing almost any effort. And then you can take that and use that as your first evaluation on what kind of AI and automation you can build in order to drive efficiencies across every process in your business, whether it's marketing, sales, HR, etc. Now, this is what we're going to learn today. And we're going to learn how to use AI to do that process very quickly and very effectively for all the benefits that we talked about before. That being said, at the end of this presentation or this podcast, if you're listening to us, I'm going to completely flip it on its head. So wait for the end because there's a big surprise about this whole thing and how to do this with AI and how to approach this. But let's get started with the actual process. Now, today you're actually getting two in one. And what do I mean by two in one? So today, what we're going to do is you're getting two in one. And what do I mean by two in one? In addition to learning how to map business processes, I had to pick a business process in order to map, in order to show it to you. So our example today is going to be how to create market research and do like a weekly recap of what's happening in your market with AI. So you're going to gain that as well, but that's just an example, and you can do anything in your business that is related to mapping business processes. So to do market research, you need some kind of AI that has internet access. You need to understand, you need to make it understand the relevance to your industry and so on. You need to be able to summarize that in a way that's helpful to you. And you need to define the format on how you want that summary to happen. This could be a document, a web page, a table in Excel, a Slack channel, like whatever it is that you want. You need to define what's the outcome is going to be. So I have this process done for myself. If you've been listening to the Leveraging AI podcast, you know that on regular basis, I share news like every week. To do this, I have to have a process in place to go through the news and so on. I do this also for my clients. I help them figure out how to learn what's happening in their industry, their competitors, their markets, M&As, news, like all that stuff. Get a weekly digest on your industry on regular basis. So that's the process I picked as our example. But how do you do that? So the first thing you need to do is actually very simple. And that's the cool thing. And that's actually the only work you need to do other than the initial setup, which we're going to learn today. So the only work you need to do is actually to run through a playback of what you are doing. So go to Susan or Jill or Mike or whoever it is that knows how to run the process. Ask them to open their computer and do the thing that they always do, but explain what they're doing in as much detail as possible, as if a complete idiot is standing next to them and trying to learn the process. You go to this page, you open that thing, you type this, you copy this from this source. I look at my emails and I check that thing, and then I copy that and put it in the AI, and I write this prompt, like whatever the process is, just have them explain it in their own words in a non-formal way, as if they're talking to a person sitting next to them. There's people who have issues with that and they're not know how to do this thing. Then actually have a person sitting next to them and asking them how to do the process. And then it becomes a lot more natural. They're actually explaining the process. The other person can ask questions, and then you go through the process. So you record the thing. If I'm going to share with you how that looks like, this is me doing this process. So if you look at my screen right now, I have literally went through the entire process that I explained to you, and you can see it's a very long, in this case, you can see a transcription, and we're going to get to that. But here's a video of me actually showing the process and how it works step by step with all the different tools that I'm using. So the first step is actually really simple. Now you can record the screen with any tool you want. You can use Loom, which is a great tool that allows you to record things on your screen with you on top of them, and it also transcribes it and helps you use it. But you can use tools you already have. Like all of us are using Zoom or Loom or stuff like that. And so you can use any of these tools to record your screen. So that's step number one, pretty straightforward. Now, I'll add one more thing. Some of you have businesses that are not completely digital, meaning you have inventory, or you go to clients' locations, or you do installations of systems, or renovate homes, or whatever it is that you're doing. So in those particular cases, some of the process is not done in front of a computer. It's done in the real world. Same thing. Open your phone, turn it on, turn the camera on, and just record what you're doing as you're doing it. It's the same exact thing. So then you have the very first step. You have a recording in details of somebody going through the process of doing whatever business process you're trying to do. So what's the next step? The next step is to transcribe the video. There are endless number of tools who do this today. So if you're using any kind of a meeting summarizer, I use Fathom, but you can use any other one, Sibyl, Otter, there's many of them. Today, even some of the tools themselves. Zoom has its own transcription tool. Teams has its own transcription tool. I really like using Descript, and Joyce is going to share the link with you, the chat, both the LinkedIn chat and on the Zoom chat, but I like to use the script because the script had a lot of other benefits, which we're going to talk about some of them at the following stages of this, but just transcribe the whole thing. So now I have me mumbling about how to actually do the thing that we just talked about, which is to do the news. But again, in your case, it could be any other process in your business. So what do you do with that transcription? What you do with that transcription is you put it into an AI. You can use any AI large language model you want. I personally recommend Claude for that. And what you do there, and now I got to find it because obviously that closed when I restarted my computer. So give me 2 seconds. What you do there is you ask it to help you create a checklist in the process. And we're going to dive deep into this particular step right now. So let's stop the presentation and I will bring Claude in here. So here's what I've done. And I'm going to walk with you through the exact process that I've been doing with the exact prompt as I was doing it. And so I attached 3 things before I even started. So as you probably know, you can give large language models background information about what you're doing as part of the prompt. And in this particular case, I attached 3 things. I attached the actual transcription that I just showed you that I created with the script, and I attached 2 examples of checklists that I have done previously for similar processes. If you don't have one, you can take somebody from somewhere else. Like just go browse the internet for checklists for business processes and find a format that works for you and a style that works for you and use that as a reference. But now let's look at the exact prompt that I was using in order to create my checklist. And again, if you have any questions or any comments about that, if you are with us live, either on Zoom or on LinkedIn, please feel free to just add it in there. I'm monitoring both of these chats and I'll gladly stop and explain any part of this process. So you are a business expert with 20 years of experience. You specialize in mapping and documenting business processes, turning them into detailed and easy to follow checklists. So that's important to do in any prompt that you have. Give the AI the understanding of which hat it needs to wear, because it will give you better results and more focused results than just starting with whatever it is you needed to do. That's called the system prompt. That's like setting up the stage. And then I started. I'm about to provide you 3 files. Number 1, a transcription of one of our employees explaining the process that he is or her in following in order to achieve a specific business goal. Now, you can see this is not talking about my specific process. And the reason for that is then I can use this prompt again and again as part of my prompt library. And I'm only adding the specific topic at the end of the prompt, which you'll see shortly. But in this particular case, I'm just saying it's a business process. This is your source of information for the checklist. Number 2, the 2 other documents are examples of previous checklists we've created. Use those only as a reference to the format and the style of the checklist. You will notice that we like 2 levels in our checklist, the main steps and the specific actions in each step. So that's the way I like to create my business processes. You can define it however way you want, with however levels you want, with whatever level of detail you want, but it's really important to give it examples of what good looks like. And again, if you don't have it, steal it from somebody else. Just go online, find an example you like, and you can mimic that and use it as an example. So now that we've identified that, I'm identifying the target audience for this checklist is business people in junior leadership roles. Like, okay, so now it knows who this refers to. That's also very important when you're creating content, when in this particular case, it is content for somebody else. And then I give it the actual specific instructions of what it needs to do. Please follow the following process. Number 1, take your time and read your transcription. Number 2, identify the main steps of the process. Number 3, identify the specific actions in each step. So I'm basically telling it what it needs to do in order to identify the checklist. But then there's a twist, and that twist is actually very important when you're working with AI, because AI is amazing at brainstorming. And one of the things that people miss the most is being able to go back and forth with the AI on whatever ideas or things they're trying to execute. So what I'm asking for it now is, before you share the checklist with me, please ask me any questions that you have that may assist you in creating a better checklist that will capture every aspect of this process and will allow users off the checklist to follow the process without external help. Going back to what I said in the beginning, I'm not using this just for AI purposes. I'm also using this for then onboarding new members of my team that will need to follow this process. In this case, our process is going to be how to use AI to create weekly digest of important industry news. That's the first time I'm making it specific. Why? Because I'm using the whole top part as a prompt library item that I can bring in and use again and again for every business process. And really, that's the only sentence that I have to change. And then the final thing is I do regularly in all my posts. It's just best practices. Take your time, work step by step, review the details, and ask me questions that would assist your work. That's it. I hit enter, and then it did its thing, and it said that it's going to follow the thing, but then it provided me a list of questions. And these questions are actually amazing in the importance of the outcome. And I'm going to give you some of them. So the first one, the example that I gave it is very specific to a specific company with specific set of tools. So it asked the following. The AI asked me the following. The transcription mentioned using Perplexity as the AI tool. Should the checklist be specific to Perplexity, or should it be more general to accommodate for other AI tools as well? That's a great question. The other thing, the process described, the process described seems to be tailored for a specific company. In this particular case, Amdocs, which they're a large international company. Should the checklist be company specific or generalized for every business? Again, very good question when you're creating a checklist. And it goes on and on with similar questions like the format of it and multiple iterations for feedback that I put into the process and different things like that. And it's asking me on every one of these things for clarifications. Now, it also adds stuff that wasn't even in there, which is amazing. As an example, should the checklist include steps for measuring the effectiveness of what we're doing, e.g., gathering feedback from recipients, tracking engagement, and so on? Are there any specific AI ethical considerations? So it's asking me additional questions that were not directly tied to the process that I gave it to digest, which is, again, great because it allows you to brainstorm back and forth. So then I went ahead and answered all these questions, just one by one, literally on the numberings that they said. So I said, here are my answers to your question. Number one, it can be any AI tool that has internet access that can search and find relevant news articles on its own. Currently, the best tool we tested is Perplexity. Number two, please generalize the process to any company. So instead of using Amdocs, use, in quotations, your company name, and then your competitors' names, your clients' names, and so on, replacing the specifics that I had in the example that I gave it, and so on and so forth. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going back and forth and making sure that my assistant, my AI assistant, that is an expert on creating checklists, has all the information they need and asking me follow-up questions and so on. What happens then? Then I asked it to create the checklist. Now, I do this specifically in Claude. The reason I do this in Claude is because Claude, the paid version of Sonnet 3.5, which is the default tool right now, has a function called artifacts. And what artifacts do is it opens a side window on the right side that actually showing you the output of what it's doing, whether it's writing code, whether it's creating designs, whether it's whatever it's doing, you're going to get the outcome on the right. So if you can see my screen right now, you don't see that, but if I click on this box, then, and I got to make it smaller so we can actually see the full screen, it created a checklist. And it's an actual checklist, like I can check the boxes and so on. And it's built the process for AI-powered weekly industry digest checklist. And it did it in 2 levels, just like the examples I gave it. And it made it short and to the point and easy to follow, just like I asked for it. So if you look at the high-level stuff, is set up your AI search assistant, define your research parameters, create the initial AI prompt, generate the initial article list, refine the article list, create the news summary table, generate and refine news summary table, format and polish digest, distribute the news, gather feedback, and iterate. That it added that. Remember, I didn't have that in my initial thing, and then update the AI prompts based on the feedback. And each and every one of these steps has between 2 and 6 things as a checklist that I need to do. That by itself is absolutely magical. Why is it magical? Because all you need to do to have a checklist of the process is have the person who knows how to do the process actually do the process, record themselves how they're doing it, explaining what they're doing, and run my prompt as is. So your effort is almost zero because the person is already doing the thing that they need to do. And the prompt you already have because I just gave it to you. And all you have to do is click go. And you have a checklist of every process in your business in a few seconds. Now, you can obviously give it feedback and make more changes and so on, but that's an amazing first step. So let's go back to our presentation. We have a checklist, and you can ask it to, by the way, do it in any format you want and in any style you want, and then you can use it for your employee handbook. You can use it for onboarding. You can use it for training. You can build presentations out of it for new employees and so on. You can do many things with it. Create guides that you share with your industry, etc. But then there's another cool step, which is using, again, Claude Sonnet 3.5 to create flowcharts out of this. So I'm a very visual learner, and there's a lot of other people like me, and looking at a flowchart helps me a lot in understanding, especially more complex processes, what happens before, what things are connected to, what things lead to other things. It's just helpful for me, and it's helpful for a lot of other people. So having a flowchart of the process is awesome, especially when it comes in combination with the checklist. Now, many businesses, even those who have a checklist or a user guide on how to do something, or a manual, like an employee manual on how to do something, usually do not create these flowcharts because they used to be a pain in the ass to create. It just takes hours or a lot of time to go and draw the things and connect them and make them in the same size and the same color and the same font and connect them together and set it up in a way that makes sense and so on. All of that doesn't have to happen anymore. All of this AI knows how to do on its own. Now, there's a question. Hold on, I'm going to go to that before we continue. Would you create a GPT, including the prompt, document uploads, etc., to reuse the documentation in different processes? It depends. So those of you who don't know what GPTs are, these little automations that you can build in ChatGPT. You can do the same thing, by the way, in Claude. So the example I'm giving right now is in Claude. Claude has the same concept. It's called projects, and you can definitely build a project that has this if your examples are the same examples. So if your checklists are similar for your finance team and your HR team and your marketing team, then yes, you can use that. Or you can build the automation in a way that will, the first thing it does is it asks the users, please upload your existing checklist, that you can have that. So this is, yes, you can automate this further by building a project in Claude or a GPT in ChatGPT. So people don't have to know the prompt and all the other stuff. All they have to do is bring the transcription over and it will do it for them. And that's what I actually do in my business. So it's a great question. The next question is, it would have been great if there was an AI tool that can do the mapping on its own. It does, right? That's exactly what I'm going to show you right now, because the other half of that question is, I would like it to do something like a Visio or Lucid charts, which are tools that a lot of people are using to create these charts. You will see now that's the next step. So I'm very happy, Curtis, that you asked this question, because I'm going to show you how to do the Visio/Lucid chart step with zero effort. And Curtis also asked, are artifacts separate, stored in a library? So yes, artifacts are just another chat, but they're saved on the side. And I'll show you in a minute how you can leverage them outside of Claude. So awesome questions. But now let's go back to our next step. So quick recap on what we've done so far. We recorded a screen capture and somebody who knows how to do the process as they're doing the process. We transcribed the video. We use the transcription together with examples to create a checklist. And now we have a checklist and we want to turn it into a detailed flowchart. So how do we do that? I do that in Claude as well. So let's go to Claude. So here's what I've done in this particular process. The first thing, again, I attached two different things to it. The first thing that I've attached is the checklist, right? The one we just created. I literally saved it as a Word document. So I copied the outcome from Claude from the previous step, saved it as a Word document, and I've uploaded it into here. Now, I know some of you may ask, why don't you just continue in the same chat? And you can do that. You can just continue in the same chat. The reason I decided to do it in two different steps, because many companies have a checklist or a user guide or an employee manual that tells them how to do this, so they have the first step. So I just broke this into two separate automations. So the first thing I attached is that. The other thing that I attached is my company's brand guidelines, the colors, the fonts, the text sizes, all of that I have as far as brand guidelines, because I want the flowchart to be aligned with that. And then it's going to use my colors and it's going to look as part of my employee handbook if I've done a good job in my previous steps as well. Okay. Or if I want to share it on LinkedIn or Facebook or TikTok or wherever it is that you share content and you want it to look like aligned with your brand. So I attach that as well. And now let's go to the prompt that I've used. You are a business process expert who specialize in creating flowcharts who accurately present a business flow. I will provide you with a detailed business flow checklist. Your goal is to create a detailed flowchart that will be an easy to follow graphical representation of the checklist. Your target audience are mid-level managers. Again, same thing as before. I tell it who the target audience is because it's going to use different terminology and so on if I said this is for middle schoolers. This flowchart would be combined with the checklist and shared as part of our business processes for onboarding new managers. Okay, so now it knows the whole story. These tools thrive on context. The more context you're going to give them, the better and more tailored to your needs the output is going to be. So share as much context as possible. Also attached is a PDF with our brand guidelines. I would like you to use the fonts and the colors mentioned in this document. Make sure you use dark text over lighter colors and vice versa. The reason I added that is because it doesn't do that sometimes, and then it's weird. It would use two shades of blue, one on top of the other, and then you don't actually see what it says. So this is me just learning from previous mistakes and updating this particular prompt. So pretty straightforward. Same as the previous prompt, I end with, please take your time, learn the details in the checklist, create an easy to follow and yet detailed flowchart. And here we go. Another artifact that looks like this. And it created the flowchart. Those of you who are listening to this podcast and not watching this with us live, by the way, join us live, as I said before, next week. But in addition, all we're seeing on the screen right now is the regular Claude on the left, and on the right, there is a detailed flowchart of the exact process that the checklist includes, including the feedback loops, including what ifs, including all the steps that you need to do. So very cool. But it wasn't detailed enough because all it did, it took the high level flow, meaning if you remember in the checklist, we had two layers. We had the general process, and then for each step of the process, we had the specific tasks in each one. And I wanted to capture that within the flowchart as well. So I basically told it, I said, I did not, I literally asked it, and it was two steps. In step one, this is great. Can you add smaller boxes inside each step with the specific tasks for each step following the second layer format of the checklist? And then it did it in a format that was funny, and I can actually show you that. So it created a gazillion sub-steps, which is not what I was expecting or wanting. But then I explained myself and I wrote the following in the prompt. I did not explain myself. I would like the detailed action to be boxes within the bigger step. As an example, step, and then I just gave it an example, like which boxes needs to go in which bigger steps. And then it created this flowchart. So those of you watching the screen see that now it actually did it. So we have nested steps within the bigger steps, still within the very detailed flow chart with the lines and everything you need to do. And the entire flow is very well described within the actual flow chart itself, which is amazing. Those of you who are listening at home, you can imagine this in your head, right? So there's in every big box of a step, there's small boxes of the tasks within each step, but the overall flow still stays the same. Again, this on its own would have been absolutely magical if you can convert the stuff you already have into these amazing things. And as people said before, doing this in Visio is possible. Doing this in Lucid or whatever tools is possible, it just takes a very long time. Like literally doing this would have taken me at least an hour to get to that level of detail, and all the boxes in the right sizes and the right font and everything aligned and all the lines connect properly would have taken me a very long time. And that saved me that entire process. And again, now since I'm using a prompt that is in a prompt library, it literally takes me 5 seconds to do. Uh, Somebody wrote in the chat that if I can do this in 1 hour, I'm very good. Yes, I'm very good in creating flowcharts. That's a passion of mine because I'm very process and visual oriented. That always something I like to do. But I definitely prefer to do it in 5 seconds with AI than in an hour of my own time. So this would have been awesome. But wait, there's more. Now I feel like a commercial at midnight. So let's look at that. So now we have the flowchart, but the flowchart, yes, I can go and continue give it instructions in Claude to keep on finessing it and changing the colors and moving stuff around and making the font bigger and whatever, all these kind of things. You can do this. It will continuously work with you on that. So if you're more comfortable working with the AI with natural tone and just typing your instructions, you can do this. But I was very curious. I'm like, they've added this functionality. Some kind of a viewer is actually creating this thing, right? It's not a diffusion model like Midjourney or DALL-E that's creating the flowchart. It's a platform that creates flowchart. And I did a little bit of research and I found that the tool that they're using to actually create and render these flowcharts is called Mermaid. And Mermaid both have a paid version as well as an open source version that you can install locally, and then it doesn't cost you a cent to run. But what it has like a coding functionality as well as a flowchart editor on the right. So you can see the code on the left, you can see the flowchart on the right, and you can use it just like you're using Lucid. But in this particular case, there's a magical step. So let's go and do this on our own. I'll open Mermaid and I'll delete everything I have here. So Mermaid comes without nothing in it. It's a blank sheet of paper where you can create flowcharts. But if I go back to Claude, on Claude artifacts, you can see the preview that we're looking at right now. Again, if you're listening to the podcast, on the right side of the screen, there's a flowchart. But on top of it, there's a little toggle button that says preview or code. And if I click on the code, it gives me the code that generated this flowchart. And if I copy the code, beginning to end, and literally hit copy, and then I go to Mermaid, and Joyce is going to share with you the link to the Mermaid website so you can do it as well. And I paste the code, it will create the diagram for me in Mermaid, which means now I have an editor that I can use. So now you see it on the screen. Now I have an editor that I can use to edit visually. Like I can click on the different boxes, I can move them around, I can add steps, I can change the colors, I can change the font, just like doing it in Visio or doing it in Lucid. So in some cases, that final step, that final finesse of things is actually easier to do here than it is to you prompting back and forth with the AI. Either way, this also allows you to export this in multiple formats to use in whatever templates you want. So it's a very helpful additional step that you can use in order to now make your flowcharts fit even better to your needs, like whatever tools you use and how you want to use them and what font you want to use and what notes you want to put on the side. So one of the things this tool allows you to do that the Claude does not do is add comments. If you want to add like bubbles on the side that explains different steps in the process, you can do it here in Mermaid, and you cannot do this within Claude as it's creating it, at least not yet. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on. So now we have recorded the video, we transcribed the video, we created a checklist with AI, we created a flowchart with AI. We have all of that. And I know what you're thinking. That's amazing. They cannot be anything else. I'm like, okay, there is more to come. So let's look at the next step. The next step that I'm doing is I'm actually making it user-friendly for onboarding of new people. So we talked about before, like in many cases, I use these things when I onboard new members of my team. I want them to be able to follow the processes that we're doing without bothering anybody else in the company. We're a small team, and I don't want now the burden of a new member taking 20% of somebody else's time, even though it's for a good purpose. But if I can do this time and time again without bothering anybody, I'd rather do this. So what I'm doing right now, I'm actually going to Descript, the tool that I told you in the beginning I'm using for transcribing. And I'm using Descript to cut the video into the different steps of the process. So let's look at the script for a second. So this is the script now on the screen. And all you have to do in the script is import the video and it transcribes it automatically. But the really cool thing is if you look at this now, if I'll hit new technology, if I click play, it literally plays the video while showing me where it is in the text on the left. So I can now go in there and grab a segment that's just one specific step out of the process. I don't need to know anything about video editing. And all I have to do is right click and go to duplicate to new composition. And now if I open that composition, I have just this segment that I can name for whatever step of the process. So if we go back now here on the top, I have the list of a few that are already created as an examples, and you can see it already has a name. Like this is define your research parameters. That's one of the steps that we had in our checklist and in our flowchart. And now what I have is a video that is about 30 seconds long that tells me how to define my research parameters. Pretty cool. So very quickly, literally within minutes, I can have the video, again, knowing nothing about video editing, I can have short segments of the videos, and now I can go and publish them. So I go to File, Publish, and now I have a online version that I can, by the way, host wherever I want, download, put in whatever source you want. But even if I just have it on their platform, like on the Descript platform, it's good enough for the purpose, which I'll explain in the next step. The next step is to embed this into whatever tool you use for your task management or team management. So whether you're using Notion or ClickUp or Monday or Asana or Basecamp or Jira or whatever tool you use, you can take everything we created and make it a part of your day-to-day task management. So let's go to ClickUp, which is the tool that I use. But again, it doesn't matter which one you're using. What I've created here is I've created a checklist that literally is just importing the checklist that we already have or copying and pasting the checklist that we already created with the AI. And this checklist is built into the task. So if I task somebody by creating the weekly news digest, they don't need to go and find this on whatever handbook or whatever other list or whatever shared drive. It's here. So the checklist that the AI created together with the flowchart that I can attach at the description, together with the videos. So in this particular case, you can see step 1 is set up your AI research assistant. Step 2, define your research parameters. So if you remember, I just showed you there's a video for that. The first step is watch the video, how it's done here. If I click on this, it will open that 30 seconds video that will show somebody who doesn't have a clue how to do this, right? So here's the video that shows the tools, shows the prompt, show everything that you need to do in order to do that first step. So I can hire a monkey off the street and that knows nothing about my company, nothing about the tools, nothing about the systems, nothing about the processes. And I can give them this task, just assign it to them on ClickUp. And they can follow the process step by step. And the first time it's going to take them 3 hours. The second time it's going to take them an hour and a half. And after a week and a half or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they'll be able to do it in 5 minutes without actually going through the checklist, but they will have it available if they get stuck on any step. That's how you take. Now, again, I'm trying to put this in perspective of how long this used to take. Most companies don't do that because it used to take hours or weeks to go through this process. Now, to get to a point, you have in your task management tool a detailed step-by-step checklist that takes into account everything you thought of plus what the AI thought of, together with a flowchart that shows people are visual how to follow the process and they understand their step as part of the bigger picture, together with videos that shows how to do every single one of the steps. The whole process, beginning to end, once the person finishes recording what they're doing, but they're doing it anyway, it's not stopping their day, is going to take you minutes. That's a game changer for any business for processes. But then you can take that to actually now understand how to build automations around this process. But there's one more cool step that we're going to look at before I told you I'm going to flip this whole thing on its head. So before we flip it on its head, an even more advanced step, which is there are many automation tools out there like Zapier and Make and NA10. All three I use in my business. NA10 is more technical, way more advanced, not for beginners, but it's open source. Like they have a version that you can pay for just like the other ones and use their servers and everything, but you can install it on your own server and run it locally or on a hosted place like I do. And then it doesn't cost you a thing other than the API calls to the different AI tools, which you would pay anyway, but it's more technical. Zapier and Make are both widely used and user-friendly and easy to use and do not require any technical background in order to use them. And both are fantastic. There's pros and cons to each one, which we're not going to get into at all. But why is this important? Because you can use Zapier or Make or Anything or whatever other automation tool you want to automate all of this process. What I mean by that is you can go from somebody recording a video of what they're doing, save the video in a known folder, and all the other steps happen automatically. So you go from somebody just recording a video and saving it to having a checklist with a flowchart on Asana, Basecamp, ClickUp, Monday, Jira, etc., without anybody touching it. The only manual process you will have to do is to do the video chopping if you want the segmented videos. But having the checklist and the flowchart, which is step one, you can do without any human intervention. Have it as a draft. Somebody goes, reviews it, makes whatever final corrections needed, and you can start using it and assign it to people in your organization. So that's the full process as far as business mapping. But I told you that there's a twist. Because now we're going to actual AI automation. Now I know the process. I have all the processes mapped. I can use it for multiple things. But now I want to use it to create AI automations in my business. What a lot of people do by mistake is then they look at every one of those building blocks, whether the lower level or the higher level, and saying, how can I automate this? When I teach my courses and I do my workshops for businesses, or when I do my consulting for businesses, I have the 5 laws for success in the AI era. And we're not going to dive into all 5 because that's a whole hour on its own. But by the way, there's a podcast episode and a bunch that I've been a guest on where I talk about this. So if you want to find it, you can go and find it, or you can come and join my course. Wink, wink, hint, hint. Putting that aside for a second, one of the laws is stop thinking efficiency and start thinking outcome. What the hell does that mean? As business people, myself included, we are trained to think at the business world through a lens of processes, just like we just did. That was the whole point of mapping a process. So now the process has 11 steps, and each step has 2 to 7 smaller steps in it. And that's how we do the thing that we do, regardless if it's marketing, sales, HR, finance, whatever the process is. Awesome. When you come to AI automation, what we usually do is we go and say, okay, how do we improve step 1? So let's take another example, a more generic example than the one we just used. Let's look at customer service. Customer service, the first step is getting some kind of an intake. Somebody has a complaint. This could be through a form. This could be through a dedicated system that does customer service. This could be through a ticket. This could be through an IVR on our phone system. This could be through an email. There's an intake step. Step number 2 is reviewing the current complaints that we have from customers that somebody has to review. Step number 3 is categorizing them. This is technical. This is customer service. This is asking for a refund. Like each and every one has different people. Step 4 is assigning them to different people, and so on and so forth. There are multiple steps in the process. And again, as business people, that's how we review it. So if I was a business person trying to figure out how to use AI to do customer service, I would start with step 1. How can you use AI, maybe a chatbot, to get the complaints of people so I have a better definition and a better understanding of what the complaint is? Awesome. Great. It's going to save 5% of the effort, and we're going to be, as a company on the customer service side, 5% more efficient. And then I'm going to go to step 2. I'm like, okay, I need to read through them and then assign them to different buckets. Okay, AI can know how to do that as well, so I can do that. The reality is there are AI tools out there today that just do customer service, 100% of it, which means I don't have to look for step-by-step AI solutions. I can take customer service as a whole and use that as my AI solution. Now, that's not true for every single thing that we do. In some cases, instead of taking you the full all the way there, you will have to, let's take our original example, there were 11 steps. It can save 5 steps. Okay, just saved 5 steps. And then maybe there's another AI process or tool that can take me another 3 steps. So now I need to do 3 steps manually like I did before, and 8 other steps in only 2 hops are done by AI. So it's a mindset change. Like you gotta stop when you're looking, but you still need the first step of mapping the process. And the reason is you still need the first step of mapping the process, because otherwise you may miss important steps. And then the AI is not going to work great. And then you're going to say, this whole AI thing is bullshit. And you're going to lose all the benefits that comes from using it. So build the processes like I just showed you, because now it takes seconds. And then you can look at it from a holistic perspective, top down. What is the process? How do you do that? And then find the AI tools that do as many steps as possible in the most effective way. Now, I'll give you an example from the customer service thing. Klarna is a large international corporation, huge companies with hundreds of thousands of employees and many customers, and they've implemented an AI customer service solution. They worked actually together with OpenAI jointly. You can do stuff like that when you're big enough and you have enough money to build a customer service chatbot for them. In the first month of its existence, it solved 2.3 million customer service complaints. It did it in about 2.3 minutes compared to the 12 minutes of the average resolve time that they had with the human people. It did the work of about 700 full-time employees, and the customer satisfaction of the customer service stayed the same as it was before. Now, going back to the specific sentence, stop thinking efficiency, start thinking outcome. The outcome of customer service is not having a better IVR or a smarter ticketing system or a better chat or a more efficient way to divide the work between the different customer service agents. The outcome of customer service is happy customers. If you can go there by implementing a system like that, do that. Forget the steps. So that's it for today. So I'll do a quick recap. Knowing your business processes and understanding exactly what they are is critical to every business, not because of AI. Because if Susan leaves next week, or God forbid it get run by a bus, you're fucked. If she knows a few critical processes in your business. Not picking up on Susan. The name could be any name in any business, but any business has these people who know very specific things that nobody else knows exactly how to do. So mapping these processes are critical. And now you can do this in literally minutes by taking the process that I just showed you, which then in return will also help you figure out how to automate them with AI. Thank you so much. This was awesome. I really appreciate the participation, both on LinkedIn and on Zoom. If you are not following the podcast and you're in this meeting, please follow the podcast. It's called Leveraging AI. You can find it on any place that you want. If you are listening to the podcast and you're not joining us for these live sessions, come join us, because then you can ask questions. You can meet a lot of interesting people and chat with them either on LinkedIn or on Zoom. And until next time, thank you so much.